Welcome to this latest episode in a series of 6 podcasts for the Faculty of Party Wall Surveyors, where you will note from the other 5 that we're talking about engagement of the faculty with its existing members, potential members, public, and also local authorities. But I'm also interested to get the views of someone that's been engaged by the party wall process itself, the party wall discipline, from a varied profession. And it gives me great pleasure to have Tony Oloyede here today, who fits the bill perfectly, because Tony runs his own firm, AO Design Limited. So that says what it says on the tin. He gets involved in design work. He's also a chartered surveyor, a building engineer, and a building control officer. So welcome, Tony.
Welcome.
Thanks for taking time out of your busy schedule for us today. And so there is a personal perspective to this. And then launching ourselves into the first question, when did your interest in the party wall profession first arise?
Yeah, thanks, Stephen. I remember when I started in building control, as you mentioned, I was in building control. And the question of when residents used to ring up local authorities, at the time I was a trainee building control surveyor then. And residents would ring up and they would ask issues about party wall, questions about party walls. And at the time I was told, nothing to do with building control. And that was how I was taught in terms of building control, in terms of dealing with party wall matters, it's nothing to do with us in building control. I thought to myself, strange. We're getting a lot of residents asking these questions about party wall matters. And all I've been told to tell them is it's nothing to do with us. It's a separate piece of legislation. As a young, keen building control surveyor, I wasn't happy with that. I was being asked to tell residents that, and I wanted to know more about the Act and how it works and stuff to do with it. So I took it upon myself to investigate a bit more into the Party Wall Act, just to teach myself, educate myself, so that when people do ring the local authority, I can actually give them a bit more information rather than saying it's nothing to do with building control. So that was where I started and I found out about the faculty. I think the faculty was just about started then. It was just in its early days. And I went along, applied for my membership. It was at the MCABE HQ, MCABE headquarters, where I had my interview and exams and successfully passed and became a member. So I'm one of the early members. I think my number is 0.110, so I'm one of the early ones. But yes, it was primarily the fact that as a building control, or at the time a trainee building control surveyor, not being able to advise residents about the Act, and I felt I needed to know more about the Act to help residents and also help myself.
That's very commendable, because on another episode of this podcast series, we've had Dil Kadru talking about engaging with local authorities, and we were trying to establish how this confusion from the public arises. Why do they ring up building control and ask them about the Act? And did you find, was it a mixture of them contacting you before and after submissions?
Correct. Correct. And there is, and still today, there is confusion amongst the residents, members of the public, in terms of what the responsibilities are for local authorities and the duties under the Act. They get it confused, and from their side it gets sort of mixed together. So that was something that I myself wanted to be able to confidently be able to speak to residents and colleagues as well, colleagues within local authorities, and that I worked in, about the Act and what is required under the Act. That was separate from the building regulations, because that building control was what I'm still in. That's what I do as well.
And what was your experience of going to the faculty and getting qualified through the faculty? We've had Daniel Ross, director of the faculty, talk to us about the courses, the 2-day course, which enables someone then to move towards membership. How did you find that process, and did your engineering and chartered surveyor background help?
Absolutely, it did help. And when I went through the 2-day course and I got through, I was immensely proud, immensely happy, and I was eager to get going with serving notices and working with the Act. So yeah, it's just I was proud, I was happy, and it's one thing that one of the letters after my name that I'm really proud to have. And it also gives me a little bit of an edge over my colleagues, because a lot of them don't know what. This is in building control, that is. Colleagues in building control at the time. I mean, I've got my own company now as well. I don't know much about the Act, so I can talk confidently about the Act and how to use the Act.
It's good to get it from that perspective, because Daniel and I have spoken on another podcast in this series about presenting the course, and to actually hear it from someone that's experienced it is enlightening. It's good, and because we're constantly looking to make ourselves better. We're not complacent, and yes, the course has changed probably from all those years ago. You did it. I'm impressed by that number on your membership, by the way. I hope you've got it framed in something special. But so, I mean, that also covered your route into the profession, and you said, yes, your engineering construction background helped. Could you give some examples of that? I'm talking specifically about the effects of excavations next to adjoining structures, or loading existing structures. In brief, I'm not expecting you to go into great detail, but how, just for young members starting out, or potential members and members of the public, how this interdisciplinary approach as a building engineer, now a party wall surveyor, how your background helped you to make an assessment of the situations you come across.
I can think of many situations when you talk about excavations, and one thing that comes to mind in which it really does, a light bulb comes to my head at the moment, is when I've been to a site and they're proposing to dig excavations alongside an adjoining owner's property extension. Could be a very, very long length of excavations. And the requirement that they would have to not to dig the excavation in one full length, but to do it in a hit and miss sort of sequence. And that idea for me has come about, or I've learned that idea, or understand the reason behind that was as a result of working with the Act and working on the other side of the fence. So I can, when I go to a site and I see that before the excavations are even dug, I can tell that the building owner or the adjoining owner, or even the contractor, that this is what you're going to need to do.
That's a very interesting example you're giving there, Tony, because it's often a situation that, this old chestnut as far as party wall surveyors are concerned. They're not there to supervise works, are they? And there are those that are chomping at the bit sometimes, aren't they, to get involved in supervision, but that's not part of our responsibility. But that example of a sequential excavation, so you're not excavating in one continuous trench, because the problems that next door's property may end up in that trench, an exaggeration maybe, but do the local authorities, if they be made aware that a party wall, and this may be a difficult question for you to answer, it may be just a generic one, but if party wall surveyors in their role as actually specifying the method of actually the timing and the method of doing certain things, and that would include this sequential excavations, if a building control officer gets wind of that, would he be making a number of inspections, or would he just say that, I can only look at a sample of these, they've excavated one pad and moved on to the next section? How does that work out in reality?
If I can talk in my own personal experience, I would be looking to see pretty much all the excavations, all the sequences before concreting. So I can only speak for my experience, my experience to date in building control, as even on a private side. I would want to see all the sequences, all the excavations before they're dug. But there could be circumstances that you could say, no, I'll see, you could see a 10% of them, or a certain number of them, and not all of them.
That's interesting. And what would you, I know it's opinion again, like everything we do, What would you rather see? Would you rather see the example you've given, where we've got an excavation up against a shallow foundation of next door? Would you rather see that sequential excavation, or would you rather see planking and strutting, the old phrase, the support? What do you think is there a right answer to that?
There isn't a right answer to that, Stephen. But I think I would prefer to see sequential excavations, because I've seen the strutting and some of it not done very well. But a good builder should be able to understand how to do it in sections, in sequences. So that's what I would prefer to see.
And it's tempting fate, isn't there? But I suppose there's less chance of things going wrong with that, isn't there? Rather than using old bits of plywood for the planking and strutting and tree branches, I've actually seen in some cases. Yeah. So what is, and probably a difficult question again, but something that comes to mind, what are the questions you do tend to get asked most often in the party wall context?
How did you get into party walls? How did you get into party walls? How can I become a party wall surveyor? Obviously, I mentioned a lot about I pushed the faculty hard, but a lot of the questions is, how did you get into party wall surveying? How can I become a party wall surveyor? Those are the questions I get asked a lot. What interested you in getting into party walls? What interested you? And I've sort of explained that earlier.
Where did those questions come from? Is it from children, from school children, or adults?
It comes from a variety of individuals. I do a lot of charity work with a construction youth trust charity, and many have not heard of the Act. They don't know about the Party Wall Act. So when I mention that I do party walls, or I work with the Act, that's the first they've heard about it, and that's where they'll ask that question: how did you get into it? What is it about? What does it entail? So it's more from the younger generation. It's a very inquisitive question. How much can I make? How much can I make being a party wall surveyor? Things like that.
I suppose that's the prerogative of the youth, isn't it? Really? And you are clearly a scholar as well as a practical man. And you've got a couple of degrees, I think, haven't you? And you clearly motivated to go out and get another qualification through the faculty. And this is not a criticism of universities as such, but I often find that when I've interviewed graduates, that the party wall process is treated very much like an activity rather than a discipline. And do you feel there's an opportunity for universities to actually produce a different course or even a module? And perhaps they do, but certainly the feedback I'm getting in these interviews, it is very much on the back burner as something that's taught. Was that your experience in your 2 degrees that you took?
Absolutely. The Act, the Party Wall Act, in my educational life or through my education and qualifications, Party Wall Act was not mentioned, which is rather sad. So there is an opportunity there for universities, colleges to, have a module on the Act or something like that. Yeah, but yes, it was never part of my degree or even college courses, which is a shame. It is a shame.
I know that's the case with me, but then again, I took my first degree sometime last century. So I was hoping to see an improvement. But it is, please, for universities out there watching and listening in, don't take this as criticism. Perhaps it's a case, another example where we can engage more and make offers to assist. So please, if you're looking out there, course directors, get in touch with the likes of Tony or myself or anyone in the faculty that can help. But it's clearly, as a profession, and you've already alluded to it, Tony, haven't you, that it's a multifaceted profession, isn't it? Obviously our bread and butter and what we learnt as young surveyors on construction and structures is fascinating, but also the legal side of it as well. And we've had Rima Barakta Patel on an episode here today, whose life began in the legal profession, and then that was her first passion. But she's come from another direction. She's now embracing and has embraced construction techniques. And so we talked about challenges in terms of universities and other people, other professions and local authorities engaging with us, and that's a challenge in itself, and one we can treat positively. But what do you think is the greatest challenge facing the party wall profession, in your opinion?
The profession, I think we need to get more young people through into the profession. We need more succession planning, if I can call it that. We need more young surveyors coming through into the profession and holding the mantelpiece and taking it forward. So we need more of that. We need more understanding from members of the public, and I know this is one of the things why we're doing these podcasts as well as the members, is to educate the members of the public. I still find that that members of the public don't quite understand the Act, how it works, what can be done, what can't be done, and their level of expectation. So we need more promoting the Act and what it does to members of the public. And that also goes for elected members in local authorities, educating them as well, understanding about the Act. There's a challenge there because they as well don't understand the Act and how it works. So there's an issue. There's a challenge there in giving them a more understanding on the Act.
And I was fascinated about what you were saying earlier about the works with charities. I mean, does that obviously the charities' properties maybe, but what about the individuals? And does that spread into schools? Does your charity work spread into schools?
Charity work, goes into schools. Definitely schools, colleges, universities, and even kids that are hard to reach. So kids that need to be brought back on the right line.
That's very interesting because the board members of the faculty have all taken their equality, diversity, inclusion courses, but it's having a certificate is one thing, but applying it is another, isn't it? Mm-hmm. And it's obviously what we're keen to do in the faculty is to embrace this. And I think what you've highlighted today with your connections with charities and all members of different parts of society. I think it's an opportunity, isn't it, to work towards. And speaking about youngsters, and in the last 2 minutes, I'll ask you a question now. What advice would you give the 20-year-old Tony today?
What advice would I give the 20-year-old Tony today? Focus. Be disciplined and channel your energy and thoughts into something that is meaningful and purposeful. And I say that for a reason. If there's something that you enjoy, there's something that you want to do it. This is me 20 years, talking to myself 20 years ago. If there was something I wanted to do, don't sort of dilly around the bush and mess about and think, can't I, shan't I? Just do it. Focus, discipline, and just challenge your energy in things that you want to do. Because if you do it, you'll get there. I mean, I've got there in the end, but this is me talking to my 20-year-old self.
Excellent advice and great philosophy, and all about engagement, isn't it? Engagement with yourself, your inner self, in many respects. But many thanks to Tony. He's a very busy man, as you can tell from when he's not studying. He's working in very many disciplines, but. I'd like to thank you, Tony, for taking time out today for us, and I hope you all found this particular podcast very interesting. Thank you.